Hey there everyone, welcome back. Today I thought I'd talk about a kind of an underrated Marvel movie. I decided to do this one because it currently, as of this video, it is still October. So I thought I'd visit something that is very beloved. This is Blade from 1998, and it is a Marvel movie, but it's not a traditional kind of film. It's a bit difficult to explain. So Blade is a comic book character. Obviously, he's a Marvel character, and he's a vampire hunter. And this movie is very beloved. So is its sequel. The third one is known for being a train wreck, as most third movies tend to be. But I thought I'd talk about it since it does relate to horror. It is technically a horror movie. Well, it's more of an action horror, superhero thriller, I guess you could say. Anyway, so Blade, it came out in 1998. It stars Wesley Snipes. We have Stephen Dorff, Chris Christopherson, Nabush Wright, and Donald Logue. And yeah, it's essentially a action horror film. And I'm not gonna spoil a ton of this movie, mainly because I think you should go in blind, especially if you don't know about Blade or Marvel. It kind of works better if you go into it with no like knowledge of it. That's kind of how I went into it. Kind of. I know about this movie because it's a very important Marvel movie in terms of getting superhero movies like in the mainstream consciousness. Without Blade, we really wouldn't have like the Avengers or Black Panther or Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain Marvel, all these movies that we have now. Without Blade, we really wouldn't have any Marvel movies at all. Um, so it's really important. In fact, most people tend to forget that Blade came out at a time when the superhero movies were either flops or modest successes. So before this, there was Howard the Duck, which is a major flop, and we also had the Captain America movies from the 90s, and then we had the Fantastic Four, which never came out because they just wanted the rights. And the superhero movies were kind of terrible, and they had The Punisher, which was awful, and they tried doing more of those movies, and they just became flops. So after this movie, it got two successful sequels. It also spawned X-Men from 2000, which we all love, and that spawned the franchise. And then after that, we got Spider-Man, the trilogy, which I love, and also people love. And more movies came out after that, like Iron Man, obviously, came out not too long after, about a decade after this one. So without Blade, a lot of the Marvel movies would just be not made. So, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Blade is not the first Marvel movie, but it is the first it's the first commercially successful Marvel movie. So it's the first big hit that Marvel had. And yeah, I kicked off the Blade trilogy. Anyway, let's get to the story, which I'm not going to spoil a ton of it. We do have Blade, who's played by Wesley Snipes, and he's this half human, half vampire hybrid. He hunts vampires, and yeah, vampires killed his mother, and so he's kind of out for revenge, and he's trying to kill as many as he can to rid the world of these blood-sucking demons. And so he is doing that. He is joined by a kind of a mentor character named Whistler, who is sort of Blade's mentor, and he is kind of this old, grizzled kind of veteran almost. He's an older man. He designs Blade's weapons, and he kind of looks after Blade as almost like a father figure. And Whistler's family were also killed by vampires, so he also has a reason to hunt down these creatures. And so him and Blade kind of work together, and they kind of go out on nightly missions to hunt the vampires. And so that's kind of the story. And then we have these evil vampires led by this kind of young man called Deacon Frost. And both him and Blade are from the comics, as is Whistler. Well, I believe Whistler was made for, I think he was made for this movie, this version of him. I think he made his first appearance in a Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, but he was not in the comics, so he's here. Um, and so that's interesting. I just found, but we do have Deacon Frost played by Stephen Dorff, and he is this young, uptight, arrogant, just kind of a-hole. And he just wants to rid the world of basically anyone who is trying to stop him. And essentially, that one person is Blade, but there's other characters as well. But he's trying to rid the world of Blade and his entourage, which is not much. He doesn't have that many allies, but he has this kind of cult of vampires who are just feasting on humans. And essentially, Frost's plan is to first kill Blade, get rid of him, and then he's trying to summon this blood god called Lamagra, which I believe was made up for the movie, which is interesting. And so that's like the main story. We have Deacon Frost trying to kill Blade, and Blade trying to kill him and other vampires, and then Frost trying to summon Lamagra. Also, I did really like Donal Logue as Quinn, who is Deacon Frost's right-hand man. It's funny, him and Blade apparently have some sort of history, because every time Blade shows up, Quinn tries to kill him, and then Blade slices him up, and then he shows up again, trying to kill Blade again. So every time Blade kills him, he just shows up again, and it's kind of funny. He like sets him on fire at the beginning, and then Quinn just keeps showing up, and it's kind of like this funny running gag where it's funny to see how many times Quinn can get killed. It's interesting ways. I just found him very funny, and apparently he had a smaller role in the script, but they liked him so much that they gave him a much larger role, and he lasted pretty much throughout the whole film until at the end, which is interesting. As most villains die, in the middle or at the end of the film, which is cool. I liked his performance. He had a lot of cool chemistry with Wesley Snipes, and that was cool to see them kind of playing off each other, fighting each other. I just found that really fun. We do have Nabush Wright, who plays a doctor and a hematologist, I believe that's what she is, and she kind of gets dragged into this world of vampires and demons and stuff, and she kind of gets forced to team up with Blade, because if she doesn't, then she will get killed. And so she's kind of like this human, and she gets bitten at a hospital, and so she's forced to just stay with Blade because he's like the only one that can protect her. And she is actually pretty like competent. She's pretty like powerful in her own way. And her and Blade have this interesting chemistry. It's almost like this sister, like brother sister bond, which I kind of liked. I did find her character a little bit boring, a little bit. Like at times, it wasn't her fault. I guess it was the script. It was a little bit boring with her at times. Just a little bit. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I just wanted to mention that. But I think probably the best part of this movie is the action. It is just so well directed, like so well made. Also, I did mention, I may have mentioned this. This is directed by Stephen Norrington, and I found it interesting that all three Blade movies are directed by a different person. So I find that really interesting. Like it's the same world across all the films, but they're all different. Like they all have this different tone, which I like. I do prefer Blade 2. I tend to mostly prefer sequels. It depends on what the franchise is, but anyway, this has a very good look to it. I think the strongest point of this movie is the action, and I think the atmosphere. It's very dark. It feels like a comic book. It feels like something out of Daredevil, or like probably Dracula maybe. Like it feels very kind of gritty and kind of more mature in a tone, which I kind of liked because it's like a different. Also, this movie is rated R, so yeah, it's definitely not for kids. It's got some swearing, it's got lots of gore and action. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that if you're wanting to play this for your kids, do not. It's definitely not a kids movie. But yeah, it's great. There is a lot of language. I feel like the language doesn't make it bad. Like it almost fits the tone. Like it feels like this adult comic book world, which I like because it feels almost like pre-Deadpool. Like it's trying to be like more adult in tone, which I like that. This was also the first comic book movie to take itself very seriously, unlike the '60s Batman and the Captain America serials, and the David Hasselhoff Nick Fury movie. This actually is like treated as if it was real. So like it's taken seriously. It's like almost like, it's they're playing it very straight, which I like. It does have some comedy. It's kind of sprinkled very subtly throughout. So there is humor, but it is mostly a serious movie, which I like, even though it's a comic book movie, which comic books are generally very silly, but this is very serious, which I think is cool. Um, and yeah, I think the best part, other than the action, other than the atmosphere, is Wesley Snipes' Blade. I think he has the right amount of just like serious nature. Like he's very stoic, almost like a no nonsense type of character. But he does have humor. It's just not nearly as wisecracking as, Spider-Man would be. Um, so I think that's different. He does distinguish himself from other like actors that have come before him, which I think is cool. And at least in the first two movies, he takes his role very seriously, which I appreciate. And he seems to be enjoying himself, especially in the action scenes, because he is a trained martial artist. So he does almost all of his own stunts, which I think is really cool. Um, and yeah, I also really love the tone. It's very grim. It feels very kind of not depressing, but very melancholy, if that makes any sense. Like it feels like this grim, dark world, which I really like. And I don't know. If you're not a fan of serious movies and like very dark themes, you probably won't like this. It does have a fun, um, like ending, which I think is cool. I do want to mention two particular scenes that are my favorite. The first one is the rave scene, the blood rave fight. That is fantastic. That it opens the movie, so it sets you off with an action scene right away, and then you get the introduction of Blade, who he is, and it just works really well. And also, I really love the sword fight between Blade and Deacon Frost at the end of the film. Although the CGI, mostly at the end, is a little bit dated, but it's not awful. It just shows that it was a product of the 90s, um, which you may like or you may not. It just depends on who you are. I do think the villain is pretty interesting. I do think that the sequel has a better villain, but I think Deacon Frost is great. Stephen Dorff plays him with such a malicious glee. He's so like ridiculous, but it's fun. And so I like that. I also like that we see different kind of vampires. We see the vampire council, which I think is kind of cool of an idea. Um, and yeah, I really, really liked this film. Um, I don't necessarily love it. I do love Blade 2 though. So, I don't know. I really like this movie. I'm going to give Blade a 9 out of 10. I think the CGI is a little bit uh not bad. It's just a little bit not perfectly. It doesn't look perfect, but it doesn't ruin it. I think the story's fine. It's pretty interesting. I like the performances. I think Blade is the best part about this film, and we get an origin. It's kind of cool, and we get some twists and turns, which I also like. Some twist reveals, and I like the action. The action is awesome, and the tone is great, and it's just really fun. I think if you just look at this as a fun comic book movie, you'll enjoy it. If you like horror, you're gonna like this. If you like vampires, you'll definitely like this. If you like Marvel movies, you definitely will like this. Um, and yeah, I think it's great. I think it's probably great to watch it around this time because it is technically a horror movie, although it's more of an action horror. Whatever. It still technically qualifies. Um, anyway, what did you think of Blade? Let me know down below. Do you like it? Do you think it sucks? What do you think? What do you think about the trilogy overall? Um, Let me know. And do you think that Mahershala Ali will do a good job as Blade? I think so. I'm looking forward to the new one. But what do you think? Let me know down below. And what is your favorite Marvel movie? Let me know. And I will see you for the review of Blade 2, which will come out pretty soon. Have a great day, and thank you so much for watching.